Hey, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing this today? Welcome to my Sunday live stream where we talk about photography and catch up with the community, see how everybody's doing. I hope everyone's doing well. It's winter here where I am. It's man, it was cold this morning.
Here are
Went
some
out.
results.
Oh, hold on. I gotta. I wish I could say their name, but Alexa is annoying sometimes. It'll just pop up and just start saying things without me asking it actually. But now I'm all disorientated. I don't know what I was talking about, but Uh, yeah, it's cold. I went out for a photo walk this morning with the photo club. David Crooks was there. I see you're here today. Good morning. Glad you could join me. And there was probably some others maybe joining us that was in the photo walk this morning, but I think only like six of us showed up out of 10, which is about par for the course. But usually we have a dozen or so at least come out with us. But when it was cold, but I got some unique photos, I think. Hopefully, just some snow and ice. I'm gonna try and post them on my Instagram and Flickr page a little later after the stream. But I don't know, John. Uh, that's a good question. Let me pull up the chat. Oh, there it is. So what happened? Let me try. Alexa, shut up. What else is going on here? Thought I saw a comment here. Roger, good to see you. It's cold in Massachusetts, I'm sure. Ugh, that's one place I don't, I'm gonna move south eventually, closer to Florida. Maybe not Florida, but they got too many hurricanes, but maybe like North or South Carolina, near the Great Smoky Mountains or something where I can just go out and hike every day in the mountains and just enjoy the landscape. One day I will. Um, Let's see, Thomas in Atlanta. I'm sorry, not Atlantis. Here in Atlanta. Um, anyhow, I guess a lot of you, if you've been following my community posts or Instagram, I've been working on a lot of doing a lot of self portraits and things, and it's mainly just to practice my lighting and try to figure out what I want to communicate in through my photography. Um, because that is I don't know. I guess I got to bug up my butt. I want to find my style, my creative side in photography because up until now, really, I've just been so technical in my photography, uh, doing all the rules, quote unquote, of composition. Rule of thirds, diagonals, finding balance, matching, colors. There's so many rules in photography, and what ends up happening is your photos start looking like everybody else's, right? I mean, there's certainly times when you do want to apply some certain rules of composition to um, capture what it is you want to capture. It's I think like more environmental type shots, you don't want to be standing right in the center blocking everything when your intent is to capture where you were, right? So you're going to stand a little bit over to the left or a little bit to the right. But with these self portraits, it's more about just trying to find a way to uh, express my inner being, so to speak, who I am. So when someone looks at that photo, they don't just see me, but they see who I am and what kind of person I am. And some of the cosplay stuff, like where I'm doing wearing the fedora hat and stuff, that's just for fun. But eventually, I'm going to get there to where the self portraits are going to be much more personal. They're going to be more symbolic, and uh, then I can start to move on to doing maybe portraits for other people to help them express who they are and what they want to share, right? Because a lot of times in our photography, we show people what we want them to see, which is rule of thumb, that's what we want, right? We want to show people something that may, better than it actually is. But it's not always the true image, right? Or the true essence of that particular subject. And that's kind of where I'm trying to go is I'm trying to find the true essence in my photography, what it is, that I want to share with the world. I can't articulate it too well. But my photography is definitely at a point now where I'm not looking for composition so much. I'm looking for more meaning in my photography. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. I was showing someone today in the club some of my images, and it's totally unqualified, but they think there's a market for my photography because they asked me, "Do I ever sell anything?" I said, "No. Why would I? They're not. They're crap." My photography honestly is not that great because when I look at photography from the masters, right? And that reminds me, I want to share with you a website that I found this morning that really is, I think, going to be is very educational. Um, so before I finish the stream, I want to show that to you. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Um, but anyhow, and I see Roger has a question. So if anybody has any questions, just feel free to put them in, and I'll try and get to them. Hopefully, I don't miss them. Um, because I do the best I can, right? Whew, okay, so let's see. Roger. Oh, Marco came in. Hey, Marco, how are you? Good to see you. Um, sure. Okay, here we go. Rob, my camera store has a few 40 to 150 2.8 lenses used for $700. What are your thoughts on that lens? Everything I've heard about that, I've never used that lens, but everything I've heard about that lens is awesome, right? People, the sharpness, the bokeh rendering, um, and just the overall optics of that lens is near perfection, weather sealed. The reason I don't own that lens, and I probably wouldn't even buy it for $700, which is a fantastic deal. It's a focal length that I don't really use that much. I would rather use. I went out this morning with my 40 to 150 kit lens, and that's only a stop slower to two stops slower at the long end, and that's good enough for me, and it's sharp enough for me. So people ask me this all the time, should I get the 40 to 150 f4 or should I get the 40 to 150 2.8? And they already have the 40 to 150 f4 to 5.6, the kit lens. And I'm like, just keep the kit lens. What are you going to do differently with these higher end pieces of glass that you're not doing with the lens you have now? Because that 40 to 150 kit lens is really sharp. I mean, I can't imagine getting sharper images. Maybe I can, but at the same time, um, it's good enough. And if you really need that extra two stops on the long end, at 150 millimeters, you're at f5.6 on the kit lens, and you're at f2.8 on this pro lens. If you need that, then certainly, yeah, you should get it. If you need the weather sealing, you should get it, or maybe consider the 40 to 150 f4 Pro because it's a lot smaller and it's also weather sealed. So I would say unless you really need that 2.8, go for the kit lens or the 40 to 150 f4. Because those are much more manageable and easier to carry in your bag when you go out, and you're more likely to take it with you and go out and shoot with it than you would say this 40 to 150 2.8. And that's why I've never bought it because I don't think I would take it with me because of the size of it relative to what I went out with this morning. Um, God, it sits all the way down in the bottom. This is so tiny, and it does a great job. So, like I said, if you need weather sealing, get the F4 Pro. If you need the 2.8, go to. But usually, The only time you really need the 2.8 is if you're doing work professionally and you're doing a lot of events, then the 2.8 is definitely an advantage. For doing events, because a lot of times they're indoors and the lighting's not that great, and you don't always have the opportunity to use flash, like maybe in a church, for example. In those kind of scenarios, definitely get the 2.8. But if you're just an enthusiast, photographer like myself, I don't see any reason to get that lens because that extra 2.8, two stops of light or one stop, depending where you're at. Uh, if you have to crank your ISO up a little bit, it's okay. Denoising software these days is so good. You know, I'm not going to buy the lens because I need to get less noise in my shots. Uh, the only reason I would buy that lens, and honestly, um, for me, I would get the Panasonic 35 to 100 f2.8 because it's much smaller and lighter and covers basically the focal range you would need in a zoom that size. Um, so I wouldn't do it unless, like I said, you really know you need that 2.8. Um, and MX Photo says, I'm using the M1 Mark II for my hikes with the 12 to 100. I also got the Fuji body with some lenses I'm doing portraits of my kids with. Thinking to go all in M43. Have you experienced Fuji and have any advice? Yeah, I have. I've been a Fuji shooter actually for a long time, or, or owner, I should say. I don't shoot with it much. I have multiple Fuji cameras. My more modern cameras are the XT30, which I traded in, and I got the XH2, and I got all the lenses I want for it. I'm completely kitted out on lenses for that, and yet I don't take it out because it didn't really offer me. When I think about going out, I want to go as small and compact as lightweight as possible, and it just doesn't appeal to me to carry a heavier camera and heavier lenses when I go out. Uh, I can just go out with the Fuji with one lens. Now I'd be pretty content with that, and not really be so much concerned about the size and weight. But it's nothing like my Pen F here. This thing is just with the kit lens. It's just tiny. You know, so I gotta put the memory card back in. But from Fuji to M43. I'm sort of in the latter. I kind of prefer my Micro Four Thirds gear because of the size and weight, and the image quality differences between the two are marginal. I don't see much difference. In fact, a lot of times the Fuji, and I set it to Provia, which is the standard color profile, look kind of pinkish or pastel-y to me. I don't like the color rendering I'm getting out of the Fuji. Now, some people I'm sure love that, but people's skin look a little pink to me. So I didn't like it for that, and then again, the size and weight. Now, you'll get along fine with either system, I'm sure. You can get used to anything really. But when you're talking about doing portraits of your kids and things, like if you're going to set them up, you know, in your living room or something with a Christmas tree, or just do a nice family portrait and stuff. Um, Either system will do because you don't have to worry about um, doing like an event where you need super fast, autofocus and super low light performance. But the difference between the two again is very, very subtle. Um, I know the OM1 and the EM1 Mark III, the face detect and stuff is excellent. So I don't think you'll get any better performance out of the Fuji um, in that respect. So for portraits, I think you'll be fine with just Micro Four Thirds. I wouldn't necessarily sell the Fuji gear off. Continue to use it and see how you like it, and then eventually you'll find yourself drawn to taking out one camera more than the other, and that's the one you want to use. Because if I bought or stuck with Sony, because that was my very first interchangeable lens camera was the Sony NEX6. If I had bought that and stuck with that, I probably wouldn't be the photographer that I am today because that camera does not motivate me to go out and shoot at all. It never did. I mean, I was motivated to go out and shoot because I really, I got the photography bug. But after a while, the camera just felt kind of like a piece of technology. Like it just didn't have that uh, any soul to it. Uh, so I switched over to Nikon after that, and it's a long story from there. But um, yeah, I would keep them both, and then see which one you kind of gravitate more and want to use more, and then you'll become better photographer. You use it more, you'll capture more images, etc. So, um, but yeah, I don't think Fuji is any better than Micro Four Thirds in really in any respect. Um, there may be some low light advantages there and some resolution advantages, but in practice, it's very hard to see those differences unless you really start to pixel peep. So, and if you look at just about every portrait I've done on my Instagram or my Flickr page, all of that was done with Micro Four Thirds and a kit lens most of the time. I wasn't even using Pro Glass, so you can get fantastic images from the most basic Micro Four Thirds system without having to, you know, go with Fuji or any other system. So when you think about getting another camera system, think about what problem is this new camera system going to solve for me? And usually the answer is really nothing. The problem is usually the photographer, right? They're not, you need to develop your skill set more often. So I know that wasn't very helpful, but I just I wouldn't switch cameras. I would just keep them both, and over time you'll figure out which one you like better. Oh, thank you, Andreas. I try. And I'll keep posting them on the community page here on YouTube. Seems like a lot more people see the images on YouTube than they do on my Instagram, um, for whatever reason. And Wayne Cox makes a good point here about the 40 to 152.8. You can add teleconverters to it. So you can add the 1.4x and the 1 point or the 2.0, right? So you can make it a 300 millimeter f 5.6, and that's a big deal. But again, I think if you're going to do telephoto work, it's best just to get the 300 f4 Pro or maybe even the Panasonic 100 to 400, the Olympus 100 to 400. Just buy the focal length you need rather than doing it through teleconverters. The 1.4x and that lens is pretty awesome though, but it's still not quite enough reach if you want to do telephoto work, believe it or not. I find myself, I have the 300 f4 with the 1.4 teleconverter, and even then sometimes I'm still wishing for a little bit more. Going to 2x teleconverter, there's a little compromise in image quality, just enough that I don't want to do that. And that, and the fact that I'd be at f8. So not only am I losing a little bit of sharpness, I'd be cranking my ISO another stop. And I'm already at a pretty high ISO a lot of times when I'm doing birds in flight and other types of telephoto stuff. So I would say 40 to 150 kit lens, and then maybe a 75 to 300, or um, you know, get the 100 to 400. A lack of, yeah, that's a pain. I don't know why they didn't just put. Bob Finley says his complaint with the 4152.8 is the lack of built-in Arca Swiss lens foot, and yeah, that is a pain because then you have to attach something, and what's my favorite lenses on the Pen F? Right now, it's actually the kit lens. This little pancake 14 to 42 that zooms out. I prefer the manual zoom kit lens, but I'm using that for my portrait stuff. So I use this on the Pen F. This right now is my favorite lens, but I think I'm shopping for another prime, like maybe a 15 millimeter f1.7. The 25 1.4, the Panasonic Leica 25 1.4. I haven't shot enough with that lens yet on the Pen F. Because I just been kind of into the 28 millimeter equivalent, wide open, at 14 millimeters on micro four thirds. That's been kind of my go-to lately. So let me point this down a little. I need to relax. As if I'm not already relaxed enough, right? Or laid back. But yeah, I like the kit lens. It's pretty versatile, for just walking around. It's kind of the everyday type lens. Um, and usually lately I've been shooting with it at 14 millimeters. I haven't been zooming in or out at all. Today when I went out on the photo walk, I did zoom quite a bit because I didn't know what to do. It was snow, it was a lot of snow and everything. I haven't shot like regular photography in a while. I've just been doing all these self-portraits. So I was really kind of all over the place between the 14 to 42 and the 40 to 150. But those are the two lenses I use the most, regardless of camera. But on the Pen F, the Pen F is really on every camera. It's the kit lens is my favorite lens. I do love the 25 Leica though. The few images I've gotten from it um, have been just sublime. Oh my God, that lens, the Panasonic Leica 25 1.4. The images I'm getting from it are just sublime. I really want to shoot with that a little bit more, but I didn't do that today. Um, what's a good prime lens for living room pictures for grandkids? I have the OM1 lens, 12 to 42A with a 17 1.4. Well, there's a 17 1.8, and there's a 17 1.2. But I honestly, I think the 12 to 42.8 is good enough. But if you want to get a prime, then the 17 1.2 or the 1.8, either one of those would be a good choice because it's just wide enough so you don't have to, stand so far away. Uh, but you can get really close and get a nice portrait too, right? So 17 makes sense to me. I would get the 1.2 or the 1.8. I'd probably go for the 1.8 because it's a little smaller and lighter. And you're only losing like a half a stop of light, so it's not a big deal. And it's plenty sharp, you know. So you'll be fine. You'll be fine with that. Uh, I think there's other options, right? There's a 15 millimeter 1.7. That would be a good choice too. And then yeah, I would do one of those two, the 17 or the 15. Does prop track in Lightroom have you used the intersect mask functionality? If so, what did you? No, I've not used it. I have no idea what that is. I mean, I've done masking before, but I use primarily Photolab 7 right now for all of my editing. The only time I go into Lightroom is if I want to do panos, like stitch panoramas together, or uh, sometimes HDR, not that often. Usually I use Nick Collection, and then the focus stacking. So I do those things in Lightroom, but not much else. So I don't know what masking intersect is. And Roger says, I do have the 100. Okay, if you have the 100 to 400, I don't see any reason to get the 40 to 150 2.8. Like I said, unless you're doing events indoors all the time, then it makes sense. But I think the 35 to 100 from Panasonic, the 2.8 is probably a better choice still because of the size and weight. And then Traveling Steam says, "Hi Rob, if I took the same photo with 5 different cameras and then processed them all the same in Lightroom, would I get the same color rendition on all photos or all? No, all cameras are different. Uh, yeah, all cameras are different. They all process their colors differently. The only way you could get the same colors across all cameras if you color calibrate them using a color card of some kind. I usually have one here. It must be anyway. You've seen those multicolored, like the checkered colored cards from X-Rite. That's the only way you can get the same colors from all cameras, and you'd have to use that color card for every shot, really, because lighting changes shot to shot. And but no, you would definitely get different colors from camera to camera, no question, and sometimes significantly different. Like I know my Fuji colors are way different than what I get from Olympus, and the Nikon colors are different than what I get from Olympus, and so on. And I mean, I've taken a lot of images side by side, and once I correct for white balance, they do come out very, very similar, but you can still see differences between them. So, part of it is because you're using a different lens on each camera, so it's going to render colors a little bit differently. Uh, Also, the color filter array, the Bayer array on top of each sensor, every company has their own formula for what colors red, green, and blue are. And then Lightroom has to interpolate or demosaic the raw data from the image file, into Lightroom so you can actually start to use and edit it. And the way they map colors for each camera is a little bit different. So yeah, it's virtually impossible, like I said, unless you color calibrate your cameras for specific lighting conditions. And then the 75 to 300 is a great cheap birding lens. This was my first bird lens ever as I watched Rob's recommendation video and was sold at that point. Yeah, it's a great lens, no question. I'm glad that you got that and are enjoying it and got good results. And Corey Kurth, good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in today. Um, and then Marco says, I like to take all of the product shots for my articles on white backgrounds, but they require a lot of cleanup in post. What would be proper technique to make the background pure white? Oh, well, I haven't done this in a long time, but uh, yeah, a lot of times I do the same thing. I take the picture and I make it as white as I can, but then in post processing, I push the sliders to push it, make sure it's completely white. But ideally, what you do is you get a soft box, okay? Like just God, you can't see where my hands are, but a 30 by 60, 30 by 60 centimeter, whatever that measurement is, 2 by 3 feet. You get a decent sized soft box, and that you put that behind the um, the object and put a flash in there, right? And that will be incident light directly going onto the lens versus a lot of times, I think what you're doing is you're probably flashing directly onto a white background, and then you're getting reflected white back into the camera. So inverse square law, you're losing a little bit of light, right? Because the light's traveling forward then backwards. So that's why you have to clean up in post, and I did that a lot. But if you actually flash from the back of the subject, then you should get a pure white background that way. If you can. If you're using one of those soft boxes, like those square lights, I had one coming in the top and two on the sides, and actually, it was a fourth one I would put inside. You know those product shot what do they call them? Product photography soft boxes that you put stuff inside of, and I had a flash inside the soft box behind the object I was going to sell. So, and that would shine onto the background. So that's how I used to do it, and then I didn't really have to do much cleanup in post, if any, because I would just crop a little bit. But that's where the problem is most people when they're doing their product shots, they're shining the lights directly onto the subject. Like if this is the subject, they're shining the light directly onto the subject, and then whatever hits the background has to bounce back, and it's very hard to illuminate the subject and the background at the same time. So you have to put a flash behind the subject, in front of the subject. If you're going to put a flash behind the subject, the best way to do it is to have a softbox in the back pushing the light forward, from the rear, or put a flash inside those white diffusion boxes. God, I don't know what you call those things, but put a flash inside of that behind the subject. And can I meter for white background and then bring up the subject and post OM1 typically bouncing flash off the ceiling? Oof. Um, yeah, you'd have to overexpose the background, but then, yeah, bouncing off the ceiling, you'll never get a white background. I don't see how it'd be very difficult, I think. You really have to get two or three flashes at a minimum. Four would be better. So you can put them on the sides, like two facing front, one coming from the top and one in the back. And that's the way you get a good white background, consistently. I wouldn't even know how to meter for it other than to have it, 5 stops brighter than the subject. Then it would be blown out, right? Any opinions on Fovean colors? I've never used one. Um, I mean, those kind of, there's kind of a fringe sensor, right? Like nobody has those things. I think Robin Wong just did a video on one, and he really liked the colors coming from it. But there was a lot of other compromises, right? In ISO and uh, processing speed, etc. So I I don't know. I don't. I've never used one, so I don't know. Honestly, because our files are digital, you can pretty much make the colors any way you want, right? And having a fovean sensor and getting those colors straight out of camera is nice, but if it has all these compromises, it's not worth it. It's probably easier just to do it in post processing. Um, so it doesn't appeal to me other than that it's kind of unique. And I wouldn't mind having a fovean sensor camera just for its kind of uniqueness, but as far as getting colors that I want, I can do it all in post processing, and I don't have to rely on the sensor for that. And Anthony says, how about all new, slightly smaller camera than EM1X with all new 24 megapixel BSI stack sensor with an all new image processor? Um, it has to be more than that to me. That's not going to cut it, because if you put a grip on an OM1 right now, it's basically an EM1X but smaller with 20 megapixel BSI. You know, I they have to bring more to the table than just these sort of check boxes, right? Uh, some sort of computational photography or something. So it has to be more than just that sensor and size and all of that. Uh, Similar to like the Sony A9 Mark III that just came out with the global shutter. They're bringing something new to the table, right? Yeah, it's got some crazy specs like 120 frames per second and no sync speed on flash with a lot of caveats to that, but the headline feature being a stack sensor, so there's no rolling shutter. In practice, I don't think it's that much better than, say, a good stack sensor will do. But for OM systems to come out with an EM1X like this, it's not going to be enough. One of the key selling points, I mean, they can't bring a camera like that and sell it for $3,000 like they did the EM1X. Because one of the key selling points of Micro Four Thirds has always been size and weight, range of lenses. It's a mature system, but also price. And I've whether I've read it in forums or I get emails from a lot of my viewers. Price is a problem. You can't just bring a camera out like the OM1 for $2,000 unless it brings something unique to the table. Now the EM1X, I think OM Systems thought that, or Olympus at the time thought that, I think it was the first camera to have subject detect, right? Birds, trains, cars. Uh, Very first camera to have that. So I thought they probably thought that that unique selling point would be enough to justify the price that they were asking, right? Because at the time, I think the EM1 Mark III was about 1,800 bucks. You put a grip on it, and you got pretty much, for about $700 or $800 less, you got an EM1X, but you didn't have the subject detect, right? So the subject detect on the EM1X uh, was their unique selling point, but I think they were still asking too much. It should have been priced maybe closer to 2,500, maybe 2,400. Like it shouldn't have cost much more than you can buy an EM1 Mark III with a grip. It should only been maybe 100 or 200 more than that for that extra unique feature. Um, so if they come out with a smaller EM1X with these other specs, it's not going to be enough. It's going to have to be priced right. So it needs to be priced not much more than an OM1 with a grip, right? Which right now would be, well, the OM1 retails for what, 21, and another 350 for the grip. So let's say $2,400 or $2,400 with a grip. A new EM1X should be around 25, 2,600 at most, and offer a unique selling point other than 24 megapixel BSI stack sensor. Because 24 megapixels doesn't really bring anything new to the table. Uh, on the what am I thinking of? On the video side, you're still going to be capped at 4K. Maybe you could do 5.6K, right? But basically, you're still capped at 4K, and uh, and Olympus is not going to get there with video because Panasonic's been there for a long time. So I don't know. I don't know if that would do it. You know, I know there's a rumor they have a flagship camera coming or high-end camera coming out. I hope it's a Pen F2 for me personally, uh, or an OM2 with something new on it. Like a bigger buffer. 90 frames is really enough. The buffer right now is around 90 frames, but a bigger buffer like on the G9. So it needs to surpass the G9 in terms of photography, but I don't know. It's a tough market out there. All the cameras are so good now. It's just hard for me to imagine making a better camera than the OM1 or a better camera than my A7R5 or a better camera than my Fuji X-H2. They're all so good, how are they gonna make these better? We've just hit this point to where cameras are so much better than we need them to be, you know? And that's why I still go out. This is the camera I take with me, like 90% of the time, just the Pen F. This this old 20 megapixel contrast detect with a kit lens. And I get so much. I just love shooting with this camera. So I don't know. I wish camera companies, I mean, it's important to have a flagship camera that professionals are going to use, right? Um, something they can take to the Olympics, for example. They need to have that halo camera, that flagship camera. But I really wish they would come out with some more interesting cameras that people will want to shoot with, everyday people, right? Not necessarily professionals all the time. Because these cameras, God, they're just, the A9 III, 6,000 some dollars. No rational person would buy a camera like that. You know what I mean? Uh, now, if there's some specific need on a professional level, sure, it makes sense, right? It's a write-off, it's a deduction, it's a business expense, whatever. But um, I can't see any rational person buying a camera like that. Uh, this doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know, Anthony. I don't think it's enough. They have to do something else. I don't know what that something else would be though, but it would definitely have to have something new and unique, like the M1X came out with the bird detect, car detect, the subject detect, the AI focusing algorithms that no other company had. They need to do that if they're going to release another flagship camera, so to speak. And Roman said, I'm thinking about getting a G9 Mark II or S5 Mark II for video work. Is full frame that much better? The guy in the camera store says, of course. Uh, I guess it depends what you're going to be shooting. I mean, yeah, the full frame is better because you can shoot in 10-bit or 12-bit. You might be able to get raw output out of the HDMI port. If you're really going to be shooting high dynamic range scenes and then grading them in post processing, the more latitude you're going to get more latitude with a full frame sensor. Um, but if you're like me and you just shoot in program mode with natural color profile, like I do on my Olympus, I mean, 99.9% of my video is just program mode in natural color profile. And then I just import them in and edit them and splice them in with everything else. I don't I don't do all of this high-end color grading. Now, when I do, I haven't had a video job in a while, but earlier this summer, I did have some paid video work, right? And in those cases, I did shoot the OM1 in OM log 400, 10-bit, and gave me more than enough latitude for the kind of work that I was doing. But yeah, typically you only need all of this latitude and range and everything if you're going to be grading in post processing and spending a lot of time doing that. And you want to change, not so much deal with dynamic range, but you want to change the colors dramatically of the scene by applying LUTs and things, right? Because full frame sensor with its 12 or 14-bit bit that bit, bit depth, right? Uh, you're going to get more dynamic range and more color. So, and I'm sorry, 444 or 422 type color, right? Uh, these things, these things are all for color grading and post processing. Um, but I can tell you that if you just shoot the OM1 in natural color profile and program mode, that's more than enough for most people, I think. I don't know why there's so much emphasis on video specs and grading. Um, the only person I can think of that backed me up on this is like Marcus Pix, right? he did a video a couple months back about, he doesn't shoot in log or, war in raw and all of that stuff. He just shoots in program mode, natural color profile, whatever, and it's fine. And I'm kind of in the same camp. If you have good lighting, uh, you're going to be perfectly fine. The, I only shoot my professional work in OM log 410 bit is because I am dealing with high dynamic range scenes a lot of times. I'm going from outdoors to indoors. I'm shooting, very heavily backlit windows. So I do architectural type stuff. And every little bit that I can get to, squeeze in a little more dynamic range, the better. But it doesn't have to be that much, right? Because I'm very conscious of where I'm pointing the camera. And, if I see I'm walking into a room where the dynamic range is all over the place, the very bright backlit windows, I'll close the blinds, you know, uh, or curtains or whatever I can to kind of minimize that problem. Uh, but yeah, S5 technically is better, but in practice, think about what you're going to be doing. If you're going to be, it only makes a difference if you're going to be doing heavy grading in post processing, especially if you're going to be grading the colors. Then the 444 or 422 color with 14-bit, it makes a big difference. The OM1X with a 24 megapixel sensor. Yeah, I mean, going that extra 4 megapixels doesn't doesn't work for me. It wouldn't attract me in any way. Uh, I guess if I'm trying to think who's the OM1X4, right? A professional photographer. They're going to know there's not much difference between 20 and 24 megapixels, you know? I think if they had an OM10, like an EM10 replacement, at 24 megapixels, that might be more appealing and do better than saying we have a 24 megapixel OM1. Because a professional is going to look at the camera and say, okay, am I going to get better dynamic range, or my image is going to be cleaner, with 20 megapixels than 24? Then I'd rather have the 20, right? So I'll take 24 megapixels if there's zero compromise. But if there's a 20 megapixel sensor that will give me better dynamic range and better colors, then I'll take the 20 all day long. Because, OM1 or OM1X, would be a professional grade camera. And I don't think the 24 megapixel part is going to be the appealing part of the camera. What would be more appealing is, you know, does it have better dynamic range, better colors? Is it, is it more responsive? There's a lot of other things in a camera, like a professional grade camera, that I think professionals would look for before they go, okay, 24 megapixels. Look at some of the high end cameras. I think the Canons, their high end is 20 megapixels, right? What is it? The R5 or R3? Canon R3. How many megapixels is this camera? Okay, see, even the R3 is 24 megapixels, right? So um, I don't think that going to 24 from 20 on a micro four thirds sensor would be a deal breaker for anyone. Like, there has to be something else to it. Do you feel AI is one route for editing modern images, but just like film people will do straight out of camera for their art form? Okay. Do you feel AI is one route for editing modern images, but just like Film people will do straight out of camera for their art form. I don't, this is something we're going to talk about next week, and in the annual meetup is about AI. Uh, to me, AI is just another tool, and I think it's a legitimate editing tool, right? So if you look at some of the self portraits that I did, I used the AI to fill in the background because, I'm just shooting in my dining room. And a lot of times, I want a little wider angle, but then you're going to see curtains and furniture and stuff that I don't want to be in the image. So I'll just mask those out and use AI to fill in. So to me, AI is a great tool for editing, right? Then, we all use AI already for denoising, sharpening, all of this stuff, right? So AI is fine. I don't see the problem. Now there's people that generate images from scratch using all AI, and that's a whole different type of art. That's more like graphic design than it is photography. But when we're talking about photography and AI, to me, AI is just another tool, like everything else we've been using up to this point. So I don't see any problem with it. There would definitely be a problem with if you're doing editorial type photography or journalistic type stuff, right? You're not going to be allowed to use AI. Just like back when you used to shoot film, they said you cannot edit. We want to see the rebate on the film. We want to see edge to edge everything that you captured. And if you touch that, they didn't use that image or you got fired. Um, but for most of us, just enjoying photography as a hobby, right, or enthusiast, AI is perfectly fine uh, to get to the image that you want. It's just another tool like everything else. And oh, hey, Brian is here. With white backgrounds, I tend to do what Rob is suggesting: overexpose the rear by about a stop to the subject. More than that, I would get spill from the rear, and it ruins the contrast of the subject. Yes. Thank you, Brian. Brian will be with us next week in the annual meetup stream. um, let's see. Gavin Hoey has many good YouTube tutorials about flash photography. At least one is about how to get a white background, white and not gray. Yeah, but he does primarily portraits. So I guess the same thing would apply, right? If you're just taking a picture of a subject, smaller subject, like a camera, if that's what you're selling, for example. But I believe the EM1X was designed to pair with the 150 to 400 Pro. It would give more balance as a kit, but I might be wrong. Um, oh, I'm sure they designed that lens to work with the EM1X as easily as possible, so to speak. Um, Rob, which is your absolute favorite video camera? Fuji, Lumix, or Olympus? Hmm. I mean, I use the Olympus all the time, but uh, there's there's certain things about when my use case is very different, right? But lately I've been using the Fuji to record some of my videos when I'm in the house here because I can plug a power bank into it and use it at the same time. Um, and that's why I use it. And I have, a pretty wide angle lens for it. So it's more about what I can do with it versus the kind of image quality that I get from it. But the image quality is very good too. And the face tracking and the autofocusing is pretty good. It does hunt sometimes, but it's not, every camera hunts, right? Uh, but when I'm out in the field, I'm perfectly fine with just using Olympus. I'm not really a big video guy where I want my video to be absolute gold, like perfect. So it's not, I'm really not the right person to ask what video camera I would prefer or my absolute favorite. I don't really have a favorite. I just use whatever I have that I'm shooting with. And the reason I've been using the Fuji lately is because, like I said, it has the power bank, so I can let it. I can shoot because it takes me 3 4 hours minimum to shoot while I'm in my dining room any kind of video, and it's a pain to keep changing the battery. So I like to just have a power bank plugged in. And the reason I've been using it is because a lot of times I need to use the OM1 because the OM1 you can do the same thing. You can power the camera via the USB-C port while you're recording video. Um, but a lot of times I'm using the OM1 and I can't use it to record the scene. So I use the Fuji to record the scene, and that's really the only reason. Um, so yeah, I'm not that big on video. I even when I'm recording and I do everything in program mode except when I'm doing paid work, then I might then I do 10-bit log, right? But I don't like to grade or spend any time on grading if I can help it. And Mike Lane pointed out that he'd rather have a smaller buffer than clear out fast than a bigger buffer on the G9 that took. Oh, yeah, I saw that. Um, Basically, what's happening is on the OM1, it has a smaller buffer, but it clears fast, and you can continue shooting while it's clearing. And on the G9, there was some scenario where you had to wait for it to clear before you could start shooting again. I think you can continue shooting while it's clearing, but there was some other scenario that he ran into where he had to wait for it to clear completely before he could start shooting again. I forget what scenario that was. Um, so it wrote very slowly to the memory card, basically. And the OM1 is pretty fast. I mean, about 15 seconds, 16 seconds, and you have UHS-2 cards in, it'll clear all 90 frames in about 15 or 16 seconds. And I think it was taking him about 30 to 45 seconds to clear the buffer on the G9. So, yeah, if the OM1 came out with a little bigger buffer, like 200 frames, while maintaining that speed of clearing the buffer, uh, that would be a nice upgrade. Because I'll tell you where I ran into a problem was I was shooting this kingfisher and it was flying all over the place, right? And just when it dove into the water, I got the frame just before it went into the water, and then I got the frame of him coming out of the water. And the frame that I wanted was the one where his beak is just touching or going into the water, right? Just going into the water like that. But by that time, my buffer had filled and my camera was buffering at that point. So it was skipping frames, right? Oh, that was frustrating. So I have to keep trying. Maybe in the spring when the kingfishers come back, I'll try again. But I got every frame but the one I wanted. And it had to, I guarantee it's because because you could see the camera tracking really nicely, right? The bird is just moving a tiny bit in each frame, and then all of a sudden there's a jump like this. And that's when I know I hit the buffer limit, and that's what happened to me. So yeah, a bigger buffer would have been nice. Yeah, Murphy's Law says a new Pen F is coming because you have a Pen F arriving tomorrow. I know, right? Pen F2. God, if that camera comes out, that's gonna break me. I because I'm gonna buy it no matter what my situation is. I'll buy it. Some months are better than others, but the last 6 months have been a little lean. Been lean, lean, lean here. I haven't had a photo job since like October, and oh, it's been brutal. I'm not trying that hard, but still, Usually I just get phone calls, "Hey Rob, we need this. Hey Rob, we need that." But it's been quiet. And hello, Baham from Denmark. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. I really appreciate it. And Andrew Banner says, I have long wondered how much more needs to be done to cameras. I know what the killer feature will be. Pixel region gain control that controls highlight and shadow blowout. That would be interesting. I think what Andrew's talking about is like, each pixel can automatically adjust for exposure on its own, so you don't blow any highlights or shadows, right? Rather than the shutter and the aperture controlling the exposure, each pixel controls its own exposure. That would be crazy, though. And then I want to shoot weddings at club music. It will be dark and long time. It's a pain with Olympus. The left microphone on my Pan F is broken anyway. Only mono slow now. Ah, yeah. If you're doing weddings and club music, I'd probably go S5 II or G9 II, either one really. I mean, I think the G9 Mark II would be the path of least resistance because you probably have a lot of lenses already. Uh, but if you're starting from scratch and doing this kind of work, I'd probably say S5 2X or S5 II. Olympus needs to do a simple comparison chart of all brands' features and compare to them, then overlay the points that their community want in future cameras, and then do a cost. I'm sure they do that internally. Uh, the problem is there's no way to put into a chart how well they do something, right? So take high res shot mode, for example. You take, the high res shot mode is so good in the Olympus cameras, especially now in the OM1. It's so good and so seamless, the process, the workflow. But then you put the Sony A7R5 or the Fujifilm X-H2, they both have high res shot modes. But I will never use them because the workflow is ridiculous. And the results are, it's just not well implemented. So if you were to do a side-by-side comparison chart, yeah, Olympus or OM Systems, high-res shot mode, Fujifilm, high-res shot mode, Sony, high-res shot mode, and whatever else brand, high-res shot mode across the board, you see a tick mark. That doesn't tell the whole story. The implementation is so good in the OM system camera and also excellent in the Panasonic cameras. They did a really good job of implementing the high-res shot mode. I mean, I only used it a few times in the Panasonic when I had my S1R. I almost pulled the trigger on one this morning. I want to buy that camera back. Oh, I would so much rather have a Panasonic S1R right now than my Sony A7R5. That's one of my biggest regrets of transactions that I did this year. Is I got rid of my S1R and I got a Sony A7R5. But anyhow, so it and there's so many other things in the Olympus camera that, off the top of my head I can't think of now, but they've implemented, and you can tell the camera was really made and designed by photographers. Um, the ergonomics and the feature sets. Now the menu system, those were designed by uh, nerds, basically. Okay, they're not intuitive in the way a photographer thinks, in my opinion. And that's true for all the menu systems across all camera brands. You just eventually have to get used to them. Some are a little easier to learn than others, but the menu systems are just trash in cameras in general. And it's not totally the engineer's fault that has to design the menu system. I mean, the cameras are so complicated and they have so many features. I get it. It's hard to design a menu system that will follow a path that doesn't interfere with another branch of features, right? So uh, there's so much thinking that has to go into the menu system, but they should be able to do a better job. They should be able to because right now, as it is, it doesn't make sense. Off the top of my head, I can tell you, and I've stated this many times before, the stupid HDR menu. It's the most stupid menu ever, item ever, and it carried over into the OM1. Why is there a bracketing feature, exposure bracketing in the HDR menu? Because they have HDR1, HDR2. These two take like 4 pictures, merge them together, give you a JPEG. Fine, right? But then you continue on to the HDR menu, then they got 3 frames plus or minus 2 stops, 5 frames plus or minus 2 stops, 3 frames plus or minus 3 stops, 5 frames plus or minus 3 stops, 7 frames plus or minus 1 stop. I mean, it's like, why? Why is there bracketing in the HDR menu, right? Because you have a bracketing menu. So what they should have done is just have HDR1 and 2 if you want to have that feature, check a box, right? You want to have that feature in your camera, but then put all of the bracketing in the bracketing menu, you know? And then don't make it like this drop down thing. Just tell it. And Nikon does this. Just say I want 5 frames plus or minus 2 stops each, you know? Or I want 3 frames plus or minus 2 stops each. It's like that's all they need to do. They don't need to have this drop down menu. 7 frames, a third of a stop, 5 frames, a third. It's like, oh my God, why? Why not just say you can take, 3, 5, 7 shots, right? Pick one, 3, 5, or 7. Then the next column, what do you want to spread these out by? Half a stop, full stop, third of a stop, whatever. You set that. And then go. But having the totally unintuitive to me anyway. Especially the fact that they broke out the bracketing. They have bracketing in HDR menu and bracketing and a bracketing menu, but they're separate. Um, but yeah, Darko, I don't think a comparison chart would be enough, because and going back to your thing here about comparing a comparison chart of brands and features, it's not enough. The Pro Capture is so well implemented in the Olympus systems, it wouldn't be enough to say we all have, all these cameras have this feature. You have to say, well, yeah, they all have it, but it's so good in the Olympus or the OM system camera, and it's crap in these other systems. And Gray Vanzine said, I've been messing about with Canon SLRs, lots of EF lenses, but what a pain not to be able to use my own flashes. Yeah. Yeah, I would. I'm very That's why I use Godox flashes. I don't have a Canon camera, but I can put the Godox radio trigger into legacy mode where it only uses the single pin, and then I can control all of my other Godox flashes. So I can use my Godox flash system with any camera because it has that single pin. Even my Sony, which has the proprietary pin layout, if I put the radio trigger into legacy mode, um, now on camera, it's a little trickier. I have to, not all Godox flashes work on all cameras, obviously, but if I'm going to do off-camera flash, I put the trigger into legacy mode, and it's well, not this one, but it looks like this. It's my other trigger. There's a newer version of this that has a legacy mode. This is I don't know what it's called exactly, but and Andrew says more megapixels is hardly the answer in M43 package. Hardly anybody needs 61 in full frame either. Stop being driven by bigger megapixel count is quite meaningless to most people. I think it is to most professionals and enthusiasts for that matter that understand, you know, what 20 megapixels give you, what 24, 33, 61. Um, because like I said, I have the 40 megapixel XH2, I have a 61 megapixel A7R5, I had the S1R, which was 47. And I don't want that, I don't want the S1R because it had 47 megapixels. That's certainly nice, but that camera really had interesting colors when I took a picture of the straight out of camera colors. And I know I just said, I can make the colors anything I want, but it really had interesting colors. Um, and it just rendered the dynamic range. I don't know, it just rendered the images. Maybe it wasn't just the color, but there was something else about how it rendered images um, that I found really appealing. And it's very, very subtle. How about a 32 megapixel? Well, a 32 or 33, I think will get you to. That wouldn't be enough. I think you have to be at 40 megapixels if you want 8K video. So 32 would not do anything on the video side. And on the photography side, again, I don't think that would attract many people because it just doesn't make sense if because the way current technology is and the sensors, 32 megapixel um, micro four thirds sensor is going to have very small pixel pitch, right? And so you're going to get more noise and less dynamic range and all of the negative effects in exposure. So that's the only thing that concerns me by bumping up. I haven't watched any of the videos yet, but there's a lot of videos out there talking about the G9 Mark II not having the same dynamic range or more noise than the OM1. Uh, like I said, I haven't watched any of those yet, but I'm seeing the thumbnails for it, and I've been meaning to watch, but I'm not planning on buying a G9 II, so it doesn't interest me that much. But that's primarily because the G9 II has a smaller pixel pitch, right? And so it's not gathering as much light per pixel, thereby having a higher signal to noise ratio, which means you get more noise in your images, however subtle. I mean, honestly, I think we're splitting hairs between G92 and the OM1. For all intents and purposes, the noise levels are probably the same, but there's I if you want to do a lab test and show that the G92 has more noise than an OM1, it can be done. Um, so the R5 is 45, yes, and the R7 is 32 megapixels. Um, straight out of camera, it's used to make one feel superior is a bit of a dumb argument. I guess. I'm not sure what you mean by that. When it when it's used to make one feel superior. I mean, from the standpoint of somebody saying, "Look what I can do straight out of camera," meaning you're trying to boast your exposure skills, like you know how to get a good exposure. That I can agree with. I mean, anybody can get a good exposure, right? With a little bit of practice, you're going to be able to nail your exposure pretty easily. I can walk into a room and almost, at least with flash photography, I know what power setting of flash I need to use to get the exposure I want, and what shutter speed, aperture, ISO, and all of that. Because I've been doing it so often, and if I'm out in the field and I'm shooting aperture priority, I dial in a little exposure comp, I can get the exposure I want, and then show that image and say, "Look, this is straight out of camera," uh, and I'm doing that to boast my technical skill and getting a good exposure, yeah, it's kind of silly, you know, because that's sort of a baseline. That's the most basic thing you need to learn to do is how to get a good exposure. So all you're saying when you got an image straight out of camera, all you're saying is that you've passed the first most basic hurdle in photography, the lowest common denominator. So it's not really a you're not really doing yourself any favors by bragging about you got a good exposure because that's the most basic thing. You know, it's good that you can do it, but don't do it in a way where you're bragging like you think that's such an accomplishment because that in of itself is the most basic thing you need to learn in photography is how to get the exposure that you want. And when I when I post images and I say this was straight out of camera, right? My intent is to show uh, the the color rendering and the dynamic range. Just mostly about the colors and the dynamic range of a scene, and say, I caught this image straight out of camera. I didn't do any post processing to it, and look how nice it is. And it's more about trying to show that don't underestimate what a micro four thirds camera can do. uh, you can get fantastic images straight out of camera, and once you have your base exposure down that you want, you got the exposure that you want, uh, then you can go in and make your editing will be a lot easier, and you can make the image even more fabulous, right? Because there was a small window where I was doing everything straight out of camera, uh, because I wanted to really nail exposure best I can and get the colors that I want and show off the art filters that are built into the Olympus cameras. I really love the art filters like um, the black and white. I like the pop art filter. So dramatic tone, and those images I'll show straight out of camera because I think they're really cool. I mean, a lot of people think they're a gimmick, but I like them time to time. And but yeah, I was shooting straight out of camera a lot and showing those images because I wanted to get good at exposure. But once I reached that level to where I could go out and I can take just about any picture now and get the exposure that I want, you know, exactly the way I want it without working too hard to do it. Um, so yeah, I would agree with you to some extent there. People shouldn't be bragging they did something straight out of camera just for the sake of bragging about their ability to get a good exposure, right? If they do bring out an OM2 or OM1X, it should have a CF. Yeah, I would say that would be awesome. It'd be nice if they did upgrade the memory card slot to CF Express. And if they did a new Pen F with tons of features, aka menus, no thanks. A stripped down monochrome I'll buy too, but yeah, that's not going to happen. Really, the only thing they need to do with the Pen F2 for me uh, would be to update the autofocusing. Man, the autofocusing on the Pen F, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's fine, point and shoot camera, but it's a little rough for everything else. They need to really upgrade the autofocusing system, and then I'd like to see them add uh, hue, right? Because right now we can adjust saturation on like 8 different colors. I'd like to see them add hue to that so we can adjust the hue like we can do in Olympus Workspace. So I know they know how to do it because they do it in Workspace. They can add that to the thing so you can really tweak your JPEGs the way that you want. That would be fun. And I totally agree with what you're saying if they want the camera to be successful. Yeah, and that's really true for any camera, right? They need to have some unique selling point over its direct competition. I mean, that's true in any business. And I'll just touch on this. It is definitely about the right. So Andrew says if there needs to be a purpose for the CF Express, if it doesn't need the right speed, why include it? And that's absolutely 100% true, right? Because a UHS-2 V90 card technically has enough room to do 4K 60, 4K 120, 422 10-bit. It has enough speed to do all of that, but it doesn't have the speed to do, say, an 8K video, 422 10-bit or 12-bit. You know what I mean? So if they upgrade the video specs, they're going to have to upgrade the memory card write speed, ability, right? So it'd have to be through CF Express. Um, and and then buffering, right? The CF Express card effectively becomes your buffer. So you'd have almost an unlimited buffer with a CF Express card, because it's going to be writing 10 times faster than a V90 card, really. I've seen CF Express cards, with write speeds of like 2,000 megabits. That's just insane. So if they, you know, that would be another thing is the right. Yeah, it's all about the write speeds with the CF Express cards, but video being the primary one. And I say that because like my Fuji, some of the things I think are some of the video modes are disabled if you're not using a CF Express card in it, because a regular UHS-2 card wouldn't have the speed. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I crop my wildlife easily 100, 200% all the time. And I'm down to like 3, 4 megapixels a lot of times with my images on my OM1. And Terry Noon says, for me, I want a camera for photography only, no video, but with excellent black and white and at a reasonable price. Everyone assumes that we all want high-tech video capability, which we don't. That's true. Uh, I mean, for me, on my professional work, the OM1 met my requirement. The EM1 Mark III did not because it was only 8-bit 4K. But the OM1 has 4K 60 10-bit. Um, so I was set, That's I just needed just a little more. But anyway, um, if you put a camera out with no video, it's not going to sell though. Rob Trek, I remember when you're extremely rich when you were in your 20s, time to go back. Yeah, I was in my 30s actually when I had some money. Those were the days, man. Um, Spent it all on beer and women, wasted the rest. What can I say? Now I'm piss poor. I have so little. I'm so poor. It's sad. But I'm happier, than I was when I had all that money. How did you know I had money back then anyway? Um, what is the average cost of wedding photography in your area? All day from morning to evening, about 1,000 pics a day, 150 to 200 per. I have no idea. I'm not a wedding photographer. I mean, I wouldn't do it for less than a couple $1,000 if it were me, and even then I'd be like, I don't know if it's worth it. But I have no idea. So Andrew Banner says pixel level exposure is theoretically possible, but I don't think we have the processing speed or maybe even battery power to achieve it in a time frame that anyone would find acceptable. Yeah. It would be like the Fovean sensor, right? Taking a couple of minutes for each image. Any recommendation for a small flash for an XZ2? I've been looking at the Mikey 320. Yeah, that's a good little flash. I mean, I just use, I don't, I use the Godox, like TT350 but I use it with the radio trigger on top. So I'm always doing off-camera flash when I was using my XZ2 with flash. Uh, but yeah, the MK, let me just double check. I think I know which one you're talking about. Mikey MK 320. Yeah. Okay, I know which one. So, yeah, that's perfectly fine. I mean, you're going to be shooting in manual, right? Manual mode and stuff, and I think that flash is not that expensive. Yeah, $69. So, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But I would probably I'd probably recommend you just get a Godox TT350 that's TTL compatible anyway. Not that you would use that, but that way you have the option to get the radio trigger and use it off camera, right? Um, I mean, it's kind of bulky. The trigger is almost as big as the camera itself, right? Because I think, ah, shoot. IXC2, it's buried in there. I haven't used it in a long time. I don't want to take everything out just to get to it. But I should take it out and shoot with it sometimes, just for fun, right? Maybe I'll do some of my portraits with it, just to prove a point. Darker says, I was taught by the best teacher for Olympus menus, Mr. Trek, but now I have retrained my mind in Nikon. Oh, okay. Nikon wasn't bad, the menu system. I don't know what they're like now, but on the Nikons I used to shoot with and my Nikon DF, I got used to them. You get used to anything. Uh, that bracketing feature in the main menu is dumb. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think it'll auto shoot them though. You just have to put the shutter into continuous shutter. And then if you hold the shutter button down, it'll automatically shoot and bracket everything. I'm pretty sure. Turn bracketing on. So 3 frames, 1 EV. That's good enough. And then I'll put this into continuous shutter. And let's get off of f/22. Oh, come on. I had it on self-timer and bracketing. Okay. Hold on. I thought I would do that. I do it all the time. Let me put a memory card in. I don't want to just say something on my butt and then, be wrong, right? Okay, so let me put into continuous shutter. Bracketing is on. Press and hold. Yeah. So I don't know if you could hear that. But yeah, I'm in bracketing, continuous shutter. I think that's what you mean, right? By the fact that it won't auto shoot. You just have to put it into continuous mode. And I think straight out of camera is a starting point. It's definitely a good way for you to practice getting your exposures right and but ultimately you want to be shooting in raw, getting the exposure right, and then playing with it more in editing. Next media says flash for the XC2. I'm using the Pentax AF160s, which is a simple 2AA return. Dye resistor, somewhat adjust power to available light, and they do fine by FISO cam. Yeah, some of the older flashes, they have this auto mode where it has this, photo sensor on dye resistor that can sense how much light is in the room and how much light the flash needs to power based on the settings that you put on the back. So it's kind of like a little better than manual mode, but not much. And Roger says, had a Canon Rebel XT 8 megapixel. How do you shoot regarding megapixel setting when shooting JPEG? How low do you shoot? Uh, I'll shoot 2 megapixels. I don't care. um, I mean, it depends on what the intent of the photo is. If it's just a snapshot, 2 megapixels is fine. Uh, what camera am I shooting with that it's 2 megapixels? It's the it's my old Fuji X MX 2700. I've taken a few pictures with that, and I'll see if I can find it here. But okay, I wish I was passionate about photography at 18 as I am now, but I'm appreciative of digital photography as we age. We are now. Yes. I mean, I've only been shooting for about 10 years now. I can't believe it's been 10 years already. I'm just like I said last week, I'm in elementary school compared to a lot of you guys. Um, so I still have a long way to go. Maybe I'm in junior high now. I still have a long way to go. I wish I had started photography, truly started in my high school and college days, because I did shoot film and I got excited about it back then. And then after college, I dropped it and I never picked up a camera other than a couple of point and shoots until about 10 years ago. And I really regret that now. I would be such a different person now if I had kept it up. And Roger says, I have some great 8 by 10s from a low 8 megapixel camera. Yep, 8 megapixel image. And the TT350 was absurd on a CZ. I mean, the XZs too, but it worked. I have the trigger. Yeah, it does look weird, right? Because the flash is bigger than the camera. Um, oh, this is regarding HDR, yeah, but continuous shooting is more key presses for setup unnecessarily. Yes. Yeah, if you put it into bracketing, you want it to automatically shoot all the bracketed frames without having to change it into continuous shutter mode. And I think that would introduce some problems. Because what if you want to bracket but shoot at certain, control it yourself? Like you don't want it to fire off continuously. You want to shoot one and then wait and then shoot another one. For what I can't think of any scenario you'd want to do that, in all fairness, right? But I think having to put it into continuous shutter mode gives you some options to not have to put it into continuous shutter mode and control the bracketing manually. And that's probably why they did it that way. Because it would make perfect sense is once you put it in a bracketing mode, it automatically fires off the 3 or 5 frames that you set. But then you would lose the option of being able to fire them individually if you wanted to. So they probably left it that way for that reason. So looking for a small second camera in the used market for my 9mm, what would you suggest? I need weather resistance and good IBIS. Um, EM5 Mark III, EM5 Mark II, either one of those. Those would be good budget options. Probably the EM5 Mark III would be best. Yeah, those are weather resistant and would work great with that lens. Yeah, JPEGs for events, particularly sporting events where, photographers need to get the images directly to their publisher almost immediately, right? Because if you look at, like, I think it's the Canon R1, one of those cameras, they have not just one, but some of them have like Ethernet ports built in directly, so you can transfer the images instantly. Uh, so yeah, JPEGs definitely, or sports action where they need very fast turnaround time, like immediate. 2 megapixels. And why did you buy the OM1? Because my 2 megapixel camera cannot do birds in flight, and it's doesn't have interchangeable lens. Ton of reasons, right? But yeah, ultimately it's gas. I don't need any cameras really, other than for my paid work. Um, and Greg says, "Love your content. I'm about to pull the trigger on a new camera and lens system. Photography will be for PTSD therapy recover. Well, either the OM1 or the Fuji X mount. Well, either buy an OM1 or Fuji X mount, OM1, OM5, or XH2. Yeah, all of those are great. They're very different cameras. Um, all I can say is if you value size and weight, OM1 all day long over the XH2. When I pair my XH2 with any of the lenses, man, that thing starts to get heavy. I mean, they're fabulous lenses, right? But where's my? Let me just get my XH2. Hold on. So here's my XH2, right? I have the base plate on here. I try to do that for all my cameras, but this is the XH2 with its kit lens. And God, here's my OM1. I've got this I do. I got my little rotating ring on it. But this is the 12 to 32 kit lens. It doesn't even stick out of the bracket, right? Uh, but man, the difference in size and weight, it's probably not that obvious on camera here. It should be though. Should be pretty obvious the difference in size. I mean, this thing is a beast. It's heavy. Ah, um, nothing wrong with this camera though. It's fine, but I there's a lot of things I do like about it. Just little things. Like I like the battery door much better. It just pops open and snaps closed. I prefer that over this push and pull thing on the OM1. Same thing with the battery door. It pops open, then you just push it and it snaps closed. You don't have to like push and turn the lever. Just little things here and there. I'm getting used to it. I'll have to take it out and shoot with it sometimes. It hasn't even been out of my house in about a month. Ah, but this OM1, I use this a lot. Man, I love this camera. But my favorite camera, of course, is Pen F. Anyway, You'll be fine with any of those, but ultimately the Fuji lenses are going to be big and heavy. I mean, like this is the 55 to 200, right? So this is the same thing as where did I put it? This is the same thing as the 40 to 150 f4, the 5.6 kit lens. Massive difference in size, right? And the image quality out of both of these lenses is virtually the same. Virtually the same. I mean, I have a couple on my Flickr page. Oops, I almost killed this stream. Let me go to my Flickr page. And where's my XH2? So, well, there's my XZ2. I'm starting to create these albums by camera and lens, but OM1, XH2. All right, so there's a couple of, here's one, right? This one is, so this one is the 40 to 150 kit lens, and this is the 55 to 200 quote unquote uh, kit lens. But you can pixel peep these side by side. They're virtually identical. I mean, you can really, you can see a few more fine hairs and feathers on the XH2 because it's a 40 megapixel camera versus 20 megapixels. But, there's that image, and then this image too, I think, right? Oh no, this is a different lens. This is actually an even harder comparison. The E620, which is like a 10 megapixel camera with a good lens, versus the XH2 with the 33 f1.4 LRM, whatever, they're top of the line 33 millimeter glass, side by side. Okay, I'm just saying. I think, I mean, this is 10 megapixels versus 40 megapixels, okay? So all I'm saying is, in practice, there's not that much difference between these systems. So I just go for size, weight, and price. And ultimately, you're going to be able to get a cheaper overall Micro Four Thirds system than Fujifilm. And overall, it's going to be a smaller, lighter system. Overall, it's going to be a smaller, lighter system than Fujifilm. And you're going to get virtually the same results. I have some other images there where if you pixel peep, you can definitely see a improvement in resolution and detail. So no question, 40 is better than 20 and 60 is better than 40, but in practice, it doesn't pan out in real life for me, for the images that I take. So money no object, just get the OM1 with a couple of good lenses. Okay, the Fuji MX-2700 was my first digital camera. I had a Kodak DCS based on Nikon years before on loan when I ran magazines. Wish I still had the Fuji. I still have mine. It's right behind me on the shelf. Can you spot it? It's right there. Right? Yeah. This is my 2 megapixel Fujifilm MX20, 2.3 megapixels, sorry. Oh, battery's not in here, but this took these like wafer thin memory cards. I mean, that is paper thin. I think it holds like 7 or 8 pictures on here. Like, it doesn't hold that many. Okay, Darko, we will see you next week. Thanks for dropping in. Just scrolling through the chat carefully as I can, because I hate it when I miss questions, because I'll watch the stream sometimes after, and I'm like, man, I missed this guy's question. What's that bracket on your OM1? I see some markers. Oh, okay. This is this was actually made for Sony. This is one of those whatchamacallit. So you mount, this is an Arca Swiss plate here, right? So you mount that onto your tripod, and then you can rotate the camera, and this is really handy. This one's made for Nike Sony, but it's the Ulanzi, I can't read it. My eyes are going bad, among other things. S63, Ulanzi S as in Sam 63. Rotating collar mount. I don't know what they call this exactly. But like I said, this is Arca Swiss plate here. So you mount that onto your tripod, and then you can just, rather than having an L bracket where you have to dismount and mount, you can just mount it. So this one definitely fits the OM1, no problem. But the catch is you can only use small lenses with it. If I try to put my 12-40 Pro, it doesn't fit, because this ring right here is not big enough. You can see how small that is. It doesn't really, and the problem is, and this is probably why they say it's not compatible, is the gap here. There's spacing here that pushes this lens ring out forward in front of the camera. So it doesn't fit under this hump, right? The prism hump here. So you can't push this further. If I could push this ring further back, flat or flush against the OM1's body, then I could fit the 12-40 Pro on here. But because it doesn't sit flush against the body of the camera, the 12-40 Pro does not fit on here. Because it, how it, where's my 12-40 Pro? Well, you get the idea. It doesn't, it's the 12-40 Pro, the diameter is too big. And that's because this doesn't fit flush up against the OM1. So you can use this with like the kit lenses, a lot of the primes, like the 1.8 primes, the 45, the 25 1.8, the 17 1.8, no problem. The kit lenses 14-42, the 12-32, 40-150, all of these fit in here, no problem. But if you want to put a pro lens on here, that's when you're going to have a problem. The 1.2 pros, the 12-40 2.8, those don't fit in here. So that's probably why it's not listed as compatible, because a lot of lenses aren't going to work with this. And that's because I just can't get this to fit flush up against, it won't go flush up against because of this hump here. I can't push this back any further. Anyway, that's what that is. Ulanzi S63. And it was like $40. It wasn't that expensive. And what brand of oh yeah, so it's the Lonzi S63. I assume that's what you mean on here, right? This, like I said, this is the Sony mount one. With those caveats, it'll work. And it also fit the OM5, right? Or the EM5 Mark III. But I had to put a washer in here, a little spacer in between the camera and the bracket, because it sat just a little bit too high. The OM1 has a good gap between the lens mount and the base, but the OM5 is a little shorter, right? So I had to put a washer in here to get this to work with my OM5. So I bought two of these. I bought one for my OM1 because I use this for work, right? I have to constantly do portraits and landscape modes and architectural stuff. And then I bought one for my OM5, but with the OM5, I had to put a washer in there, and then it fit okay, but it's still a little bit tight. It's not ideal. It's tight, but it works. Was the 14 to 42 lens an Olympus? Yes. 14 to 42 is Olympus. Panasonic has a 12 to 32. I don't know what they might have a 14 to 42, but I only have the Olympus 14 to 42, and I have a Panasonic 12 to 32. Both are terrific lenses. The 12 to 32 is a little sharper though, just a hair. Yes, I've seen the small rig cage. I can't pull the trigger. There's another one made by someone, I forget who makes it, that I want to get, but it's $100. $100. I paid $10 for. I just want a base plate like I got on my Fuji here. This is a J-Win, right? I think I paid $10 or $15 for this base plate. I want the same thing for the OM1 for $10 or $15. I don't want to spend $100 for a base plate. I just can't find any third-party base plates for about $15 like I did for both my Sony. My Sony has a, same brand base plate, you know, $15 for this, give or take. It's just it's ridiculous. God, these cameras are so heavy. I got to take them out and shoot sometime. They're gonna turn into like my XT30 and my S5 that I never took out. My S5 sat on the shelf for 3 years. It had like 2,000 clicks on it. Same thing with the Fuji when I sold them. Yeah, no problem, Greg. Like I said, definitely check out my Flickr page and those albums and just look at them for yourself. And then you pretty much, I think you'll come to the same conclusion I did, was like 40 megapixels, 60 megapixels. What's the big deal? Because I did the same comparisons with the Sony 61 megapixel camera. And it's not having more megapixels is not that big a deal. The 14 to 40, yes, until it breaks, and it will, yes. This is my second 14 to 42 easy lens that has the power zoom. Uh, I did have one go bad, and I've had a few others, users tell me that theirs have gone bad. One guy got his fixed for $83. This was a couple of years ago, before OM Systems. He had it fixed for $83. Uh, which I guess is fair, right? That's a fair price to get it fixed, but um, yeah, I had one go bad. So I got another one for cheap, like 100 and something dollars. If that, I got a good deal on it, brand new. Oh, non-power zoom one broken. Wow. That's a little bit more rare. I did have one of those. Uh, it didn't go bad on me. It was bad when I got it. I bought a used camera that came with a 14 to 42 kit lens, and when I was zooming somewhere between like 25 and 30 millimeters, uh, the lens would disconnect or something. It did something weird right at that, somewhere right in that range. Um, so I imagine the ribbon cable or something was definitely starting to go on it. I haven't, Bob is asking if I ever done a side by side of the Ollie 14 to 42 and the PL 20 12 to 30. I don't think I've done a video on it. I might have, but I don't think I have. And uh, but I've done my own testing. And what I did is I took a high res shot for the 12 to 32 and a high res shot on the 14 to 42, because I wanted to stress the lens as much as possible. And the 12 to 32 was resolving a little more detail than the 14 to 42. Some would say significantly more. I would say it's a little more, right? It's definitely better. I mean, clearly a better, sharper lens. Uh, but I didn't do a deep analysis on it, and I was only really looking at the center. I wasn't going corner to corner and seeing how the detail was. Uh, but when I first got the 12 to 32 from Panasonic, I noticed right away a difference in the images. They just had a little bit more punch to them, a little more contrast. Uh, and that got me curious. So I did a couple of high res shot modes side by side. And that's when I found that the 12 to 32 is sharper, at least in the center, than the 14 to 42. But I haven't done a full on side by side comparison. I guess that would be a fun video to do, right? The 12 to 32 is mechanical. I was debating between the two to use with the Pen F. Um, yeah, for photography, I prefer the mechanical zoom. And the 12 to 32, where did I put that? That's on my, let me put this on the Pen F for you. So cosmetically, I like the look of the power zoom on this because it has this silver ring right here. But it doesn't show in your picture, so who cares, right? So that's the 12 to 32 on the Pen F. That's what it looks like. It it looks kind of plain to me on this camera, but I mean the camera is so beautiful, and then you just got this black cylinder on there. And then when you extend it out, right, that's what it looks like. And it doesn't change much by zooming in and out in terms of the overall length. Uh, but yeah, you don't get much more compact than this, right? This will definitely fit in a coat pocket. So, but I just like the look of this better cosmetically, and I have a lens hood on it, one of these pop-up rubberized ones. This will fit. I think this will fit the 1232 also. Let me see. Yeah, it's the same ring. So you can use the same filters and lens caps and everything. But this is the 12 to 32 with the same lens cap. And I don't think it'll work as well on this though, because 12 millimeters is a little bit wide. I'm probably get some vignetting here. Let me see. Oh no, it's fine. All right. Okay. I thought I might get some vignetting with this lens. Maybe if I extend it out. Yeah, okay. If you push the lens hood all the way out like this at 12 millimeters, you will get a little bit of vignetting at 12 millimeters. But if you push it in, there's no vignetting, and there's still a little bit of a lip in here to give you some shading. Anyway, I think I've seen a silver one, but I wonder if it scratches if you get black underneath. That would be annoying. And Gray Vanzini, in my experience too, the 12 to 32 is a pinch better. Yeah, I think so too. It's where the lens compacts up and puts too much strain on the ribbon cable. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a common problem, but it definitely wasn't uncommon, right? Like I've heard it enough times about the ribbon cable on the power zoom, working its way loose and the lens goes dead. But so I use the PZ on my EPL8. It's a bit touchy. Yep. I don't like the power zoom though. It's a pain zooming in and out when you're doing photography. Okay, so let me show you this one site before I go. Let me see. Magnum. I'm going to put the link in the chat. So full screen. This is the site, magnumphotos.com, and they have a drop-down menu here, Learn. And then in here, oh, wait. These are the workshops. This is not what I was looking for. I was just there this morning. Going to photographers. Oh, you're not even seeing my screen. Sorry about that. Hold on. I thought it was right here. Damn it. So I was all over this website this morning and I said, oh, I got to come back to this. Did I? Give me a second here. Magnumphotos.com. If you want to see some really good photography, there's some really amazing work there. Damn it. Oh, there it is. Theory and practice. All types. Bruno. Bear with me a second here. Yeah, this is it. So this page here, let me grab the link. All right, so I just put the link. If you guys want to learn photography from, see some awesome photography and read directly from the photographers themselves how to take better photos, that's a really good place. Because it's not too, how do I get back to that screen? So magazine, theory and practice. And there's all kinds of things in here. So all types, let's do story. And you can pick a photographer you like. Who was I looking at this morning? Anyway, just pick a photographer and then they will go into, and you can read how they came up with these images and what they were thinking and how you can improve your photography. There's so many things in here and so much amazing photography. So check that out if you need some inspiration or um, etc. Let's see. So definitely check that out. And let's see. David Crook said I should sell, as I don't use it since I got the 12 to 40. Yeah, sell it. I mean, I'd buy it, but I got two or three of them myself. Great history there. A lot of historic photography went through Magnet. Yeah, some amazing photography in there. I was just so impressed, and that's why I mean I feel like I'm an infant compared to some of the photography that I see in there. I mean, I'm not like a journalistic. I'm leaning more towards editorial type photography where I'm taking a picture and want to tell a story, maybe with some text next to it or something. Um, but yeah, I can't hold a candle to what I see in there, and a lot of people can't, right? That's why they're on that page and we're not, right? But wow, that it was some amazing photography in there. Um, Andrew Banner, it was a long time ago. What are we talking about there? Oh, you interviewed Elliot Erwitt. Love his work. Wow. Did you actually work at Magnum or have some sort of affiliation with them? That's pretty impressive. But yeah, that place, I just found that place this morning because I was looking at another photographer that I found through Joe Edelman's website. Because Joe Edelman does these quotes every day on his website at his Tog Knowledge community, but on his website, on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram, everywhere, right? And there was a quote there that caught my eye. So I wanted to research more about that photographer, and it somehow I got to this page on Magnums. When you're surfing the web, you go everywhere. Somehow I ended up on that website, and I had to stop and look at it. I was like, man, this is some good stuff, right? To put it mildly. And I was just so amazed. And then somehow I landed on this page, Theory and Practice, and I started reading what that photographer was saying about how to capture do photography. And I just I was like, man, this what an amazing resource just to hear it from the horse's mouth, right next to the image that they're talking about, side by side. Now it's not a whole book because Ansel Adams. I have books by Ansel Adams that I can flip through and read in a weekend. But that's like a nice little bite. Each morning I can read one page in about 10 minutes and look at it and think about it and get some inspiration and go out and shoot. Right. But Andrew says you worked at magazine publishing of an old magazine by the name of Photography. Inspired name. That's funny. I'm sorry. I should show this on the screen. Um, and then you go on to say, I wrote mostly for home computer magazines, but also did quite a bit for the early digital photo magazines in the UK. Okay. So you have some relationship and a lot of exposure to the good old days of photography when it was really about photography and not about gear, because back then, people just chose their camera and film stock and went out and shot. And I think the age of, and this was something I read on Magnum, that the age of long form photography, right, where you'd work on a project for 10 years, for example, and finding somebody to sponsor you to do something like that, those days are long gone. Maybe it still exists. I don't know. I'm just going by what I can find, little bits and information, because that's a whole world of photography that I never knew about. The sort of the hidden world in my, well, not hidden, but it's definitely, when you're on YouTube and Instagram and all the current social media kind of photography type stuff, you don't see this kind of stuff, right? They're two separate worlds. And in that world, like what I saw on Magnum and what I'm learning through Joe Edelman's Tog Knowledge community, that's a whole nother level of photography that I want to aspire to, and be able to create work like that. That, who knows? I'm not young, but I'm not that old. Who knows? Maybe in 5 or 10 years, I can have my own gallery, right? Because my work is that good. I can only dream. But God, it was a lady I was reading about this morning. What was her name? Because she kind of came into photography in a very just by chance. I'll find her name real quick. Once I see her picture, yeah, this woman, I'm pretty sure. Why isn't that screen? Let's see if it shows now. This woman, Ing Mort. Uh, I was also looking at this guy. No, I was looking at her today, but it was actually this guy, Bruno Barbie, or Bruno Barbet. This is how I found the Magnum website. I started with joeedelman.com website, quote of the day, and that had a link to this website. And so let me put a link to this guy in the chat. Uh, so this is where I started, was on this page from Joe Edelman, and that took me to the Magnum, and then from the Magnum, I started finding all these other things. Wow. And yeah, it's one famous photog after another. I believe it, man, because the work is really amazing. And I think you might get such assignments from camera manufacturers for publicity, and also things like National Geographic. Possibly. Like I said, I mean, I don't know that. I don't know the publishing side of world at all. The fine art, the assignment type stuff. Um, And Magnum was founded by Robert Capa, Henry Cartier-Bresson, George Roger, and David Shim. Yeah, those are all names I should be able to roll off the tip of my tongue one day. I recently heard that the culture at Nat Geo has changed from years ago. Now, let me tell you something. I got an email. Nobody can see me. So I got an email. I subscribe to the Nat Geo email, and I get emails. I haven't. I look at them once in a blue moon, but every now and then I'll look at one. And I was looking at the images because I wanted to see the photography that Nat Geo was producing. And I looked at the images in the most recent email I got, and they were all from Getty Images. I was like, really? I was like, if they're just buying stock photos off of Getty, maybe they're buying from famous photographers' stock photos. I can't believe that, but maybe. I was like, why am I subscribed to this Nat Geo thing if the images are just what they're buying off of stock photo sites? Because I looked at some of the images, I'm like, these are okay. And then I said, well, who's the photographer? Because sometimes when you see the photographer, then in your mind, suddenly the photo's 10 times better, right? When really it's the same crappy photo. But because I've seen a lot of photography that I thought was just okay. I was like, um, but then there'd be something that would be like just jaw dropping, amazing, from the same photographer. But the images that I saw on Nat Geo were from Getty Images, and I was like, I was so disappointed. I was like, these are nice, but these are not necessarily like an assignment that they sent out a photographer to do specifically for this article, right? Oh, and he says, I know that Nat Geo occasionally advertised for new contributors, never considered I could be good enough, so I never applied. Oh, I know, right? It's like, when when will it ever be that good? I just I just can't believe, like I was looking at Yusuf, somebody Yusuf, can't remember his name. They're just shooting film, but man, the images and the dynamic range and the tonality of the images and the lighting was just so amazing. Yeah. Oh, Alan's heading out. Okay, Alan. Yeah, I should probably wrap up here. I've been on here forever. So uh thanks everybody for coming in and chatting with me. I really appreciate it. Hopefully I helped a few of you, but for the most part, I just enjoy our time together and sharing our experiences with photography. And I hope that I inspire you to go out and shoot some photography. I do the best I can. So check my Instagram and my community page tab on YouTube for photos that I'm working on or that I'm taking. Look for some inspiration. I'll try and add some more detail to give you some more behind the scenes stuff too, to show you that, I'm in a relatively mediocre place, but I'm making images that you'd never know I took this like in my dining room, right? Um, or whatever location. So I appreciate all the great feedback I got on those images, and I'll try and do some more. And um, I have some more product reviews I have to get out, which I don't know why I got all these. They're sending me all these products in the wintertime when it's so freaking cold out. I wish they'd spread it out more, but I just got deluged all of a sudden with these products. But they're lighting products, so I'll try and do some demonstrations with that. So look for those too on the video side. Thanks for coming in today, and I'll see you guys again next week for the sixth annual Micro Four Thirds meetup. And I'm going to have a lot of great guests on there: Robin and Peter and Brian. Uh, Man, my brain is mush now, but 5 people will be coming. Maddie and you know them all. You know them all. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.